So welcome to the Laura and Benny show. We're going to talk about a topic today, and I said to Benny about a week ago, I was like, I want to talk about this. And his face just kind of dropped, and I think the music in your head, you know that really dreaded music, dun, 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 like went off in your head. I didn't see it as like a big topic like that.
I think what it was, you know, like in Harry Potter, you're not allowed to say the word. So it's like, it's one of those things, one of those topics.
It's the Voldemort of weddings.
Yeah, so if we mention it, like, the bad thing might happen. And I suppose everybody's horror.
It happens at every wedding. It happens at every wedding.
No, but it happened. And then I kind of like thought about it and thought, because the majority of the time, right?
Yeah.
It happens in a good way, that it isn't a major issue, that it goes by okay. And the majority of weddings, it is absolutely no problem. But everybody knows the horror story of the 2-hour speeches.
Oh, well, you give away what we're going to talk about. Yeah, we're going to.
So like, if you're supposed to introduce it.
No, I was leaving it build up.
Oh, the tension.
The tension. Yeah.
But like, it doesn't matter where you are, who you are. So whether it's a wedding or not a wedding, right? Okay. So whether you're a guest or a family member or a poor videographer who has to run around and get extra batteries.
Sorting the whole thing is going up.
If like, even if you're at a wedding or not at a wedding, and you're locked into a room and you have to listen to someone speak, and it's like, one, it's not a good speech. After a certain point in time, it's not a good speech. It's dragging on. You're about to throw yourself out the window or banging your head off a wall. Like, no one wants to do that. It's like, and then I was thinking, I just thought of it there. Do you know when you go to your kids' play?
Yeah.
And whoever organised the play decided they were going to do the full length of the play, when there's no need for the kids to do a 2.5-hour Phantom of the Opera.
These kids love doing 2 hours of Phantom of the Opera. You leave those
if we
kids
just let them sing like 2 or 3 songs and it was done in 45 minutes, but then it's like after 1.5 hours and they're like, we're going to have an intermission there, and you're like, there's more.
An intermission, because all the children need to have the spotlight, same as wedding. So if you missed that at the start, today we're talking about wedding speeches. I don't see this. Like,
no, but the whole thing is right. So my idea was like, okay. So if we're going to talk and tell people all the different ways they can do speeches and all that type of stuff, right? Yeah. And I'm like, they might go, that's a great idea, and I'm like, that's going to take 45 minutes.
We never tell people what to do. We tell people the experiences.
No, we're making them aware of all the different things.
Yeah, exactly, and we give them kind of insight into what we've seen work really well, what we've seen work terribly, and it's just being honest about it. And there's so much to it, because I know when you talk to a lot of couples and you ask them, are you doing speeches? And people might go, well, why are you asking if they're doing speeches? Of course they're doing speeches. Not everyone does speeches. Yeah. And it comes down to that. So it's not for every wedding we go to, it's not the same routine of yes or no, there's speeches, when the speeches happen, who speaks, how long they speak for. Like, it's completely different. So for people that are like, oh, why are they asking? Is because everyone, and it's the same with everything in a wedding, everyone's doing things slightly different and putting their own spin on it. And I more wanted to talk about this along the lines of, you don't have to do them at a certain time of the day. You could do them in the drinks reception, you could do them after the meal, or any time in between. You know, you don't have to have the two fathers stand up and do a speech. The moms might do it. And I won't get into it too much now, but I just kind of wanted to kind of throw out, you can be a little bit alternative. And if you hate the idea of doing a speech, and it actually is freaking you out to the point of you're getting sleepless nights over it, don't do one.
Yeah, and that would be the other thing is, like, while I say that is, while I've said all what I've said, like, I mean, the horror is...
you said it, it's out there. Okay, people are like, I love my children's school play.
but what, the majority thing is, speeches, the reason why I was kind of like, oh, don't mention it, is because speeches over the last few years, like the old thing of the bog standard father getting up and speaking for 45 minutes, that's gone. The majority of the time, it's gone. So the majority of the time is, right, speeches happen within a 20-30 minute window. Yeah. They're normally kind of, a few of them are very brief, one of them's really good, and so on, and the thank yous are done. One of them's really good. But like in terms of...
Only one of you can have a good speech.
1 in 4 is normally good. But I actually like speeches, so while I'm kind of like, oh, don't mention the horror.
Everyone there from it was like,
I actually like speeches, even when you don't know people. I sometimes I'm the one laughing. I'm like, I get that in joke.
I was actually about to say, my favourite part of speeches, because you've such a giggle. Like, I have a giggle, but you have such a, like, you've got this like cackle sometimes when you're really laughing.
Yeah.
I'll be the other side of the banqueting room, and to people, there's just a person laughing out loud, and I'm there putting my head going, Benny.
Because the best man went there. He wasn't sure whether he should have went there. Nobody has got it, and it's kind of like
but Benny
he's
got it.
just got it there, and I'm like, yeah, he nailed that. So
it's true.
Yeah, it's true. So I'm actually pro speeches, and the other thing is, if it's your wedding, like do it your way.
You have badges made up.
I'm
pro wedding. Pro speeches at wedding. We could sell them. We could make up like pros and cons of weddings and say when you're pro, what you're like, sell badges. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, you've trouble.
Oh, that's sad.
But it's all right. I have a list to check. But if speeches are your thing and you're like, I don't care that my father's going to talk for 45 minutes and I'm going to get up and talk for 40 minutes. That's on you, and that's on your crowd. And we'll
have the wedding day you want to have.
So it's like it's the same of if you're kind of you want a really long drinks reception, or if you want you don't care about your drinks reception, or if you want a hardcore acid house dance DJ and you don't care that your guests expected like your standard wedding band that was going to play 70s and 80s, but if you're going hardcore Metallica, like that's your business, like so it's your crowd, and the 100 or 200 people that were invited,
they'll just go along with it. They'll remember it forever. Okay, so we've got over that kind of that fear of. There's no we in this.
We're having the chat.
I never had to get up there to get over it. Okay, so there's a few things I want to talk about within speeches, right?
What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about those things. Okay. Oh, listen, the amount I want to talk about. But
and then the other thing I was laughing at, right? I'm going to interrupt you again, is
great.
I think it's hilarious that like I first off started off giving out about the 2-hour speeches, and then we're going to have a rant. This is such a topic that you could you could rant on about this for 40 minutes. We're going to have a 40-minute rant about the fact that you shouldn't have a 40-minute speech.
Well, if you stop interrupting me, it'd be a lot shorter. Okay, so let's go through bit by bit. I have not got a typed out list because I know what I want to talk about. I think you need.
I'm so concerned about this topic that I made a list.
Blanket.
Yeah, because we need to touch on everything.
It's
a dangerous topic.
Calm down. Okay, first of all, let's talk about when you can do your speeches.
You want to go when?
I want to go when. Because when you ask people, when are you doing your speeches? A lot of the time, they're unsure, they haven't really chatted about it, or the venue have kind of told them, this is when you do your speeches at this venue. Now, I'm not saying that they won't change their mind if you were to ask them, but they would say to you, usually this is how things work here, and it just works really well for their service.
Yeah, and somewhere in my sheet, I do have kind of like a venue, a good venue. Okay.
A good one.
Because there are some that are just like, yeah, whatever's going on, like, whatever. And they don't even know.
It's not that they're not a good venue, they're just really laid back.
Does anybody know where their soup spoons are? A good venue who does a lot of weddings have a routine and they know what works within their service. Yes. So if they say, you're not allowed to do speeches at this time because our routine is 1, 2, or 3, trust their advice that they know what they're doing within their setup, within their kitchen staff, within their wait staff, and they have it down. And they should give you a few options. They're hardly going to say you can only do it then. It's kind of like, well, if you want to do it then, you have to do this, or we advise you do whatever. And then the other thing is, I don't know, because I completely forgot.
That's okay. Let's talk about, you're very excitable. Let's talk about like the different options, okay? So like you would expect me to say, okay, so we've got before the meal, we've got after the meal. There are two things that happen, but what we're seeing more and more now is, go back further in the day, is in the drinks reception. This is before they've called the bell for dinner. This is before the guests have moved from the drinks reception area into the area where they'll sit down at their designated seat and, for banqueting, dining. They will do the speeches in the drinks reception. Now, this can happen indoors. We've done many speeches out in the garden, outdoors. It's beautiful in the summertime.
Videographer's dream.
Outdoors with birds chirping, a bit of wind.
Waterfall.
Yeah.
But this originated from a little bit more, became more prominent in the smaller weddings, or just in the different stream of things through the other thing that we shall not name.
Well, that as well. I think that was part of it. But like we did do weddings pre that thing. That happened for 2 years. Yeah. And they did have, now there wasn't as many.
A random one.
But there was a random one. And I think sometimes what people is they want to do speeches.
Okay.
But they don't want the formality of the speeches.
Okay.
When it comes to there'll still be an MC, but the MC is standing up and then they're bringing the mic to someone, or they're standing at a pulpit and everyone's sitting while the person's standing and everyone's looking up at you. In the drinks reception, it's kind of, you're handed a microphone, a quick introduction, everyone's standing around, they're sipping on their drink, some people might be sitting, kids are playing in the corner, and it's very, very relaxed. And I think it kind of, the anticipation for the person speaking, they always seem less stressed about it, because I think it's way more casual than you're sitting at the top table usually and you could be looking out at a sea of 400 people, and the thought of actually taking the mic into your hand and getting your ass out of the chair and standing up to say that first word, it's not easy.
Yeah,
it's
so
not.
it's the difference between you're standing to speak to a whole room as opposed to
everyone's
in a drinks reception.
Around.
Well, people are standing, sitting, they're half leaning on chairs.
Yeah.
It's more casual.
Exactly.
So it's
people are out and the smokers listen through the window.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
an environment
casual.
that you've probably already been in 30 minutes to 60 minutes. So you're comfortable in this environment, as opposed to going into a fresh environment. You stand up and you're spotlight.
Exactly. And then as well as that is, it kind of like there's a couple of ways in the day where you can control, and we'll talk about how long speeches can go on for. I know you touched on it there a while ago. But when it's in the drinks reception pre the bell call, so the bell call says 5:30 on average, and your speeches start at 5, you kind of know you've got that 30-minute window before they need to ring for dinner. And if it goes over by a few minutes, it's not the end of the world. But what you intend on being a 30-minute speech session is not going to turn into an hour and a half. I've never seen that happen in drinks reception.
But that's only on individuals. That's because
but they kind of know that they know the bell's going to ring at 5:30, so they know we've got from 5 on 5:30, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
And in general, I suppose one of the things that we always talk about is communication.
Yeah.
So we all kind of the casual advice we kind of speak when someone's we kind of get a hint of there's something going on with the speeches as to either kind of someone in danger of speaking over or whatever else. If you have an instinct of my father might go off on one. Yeah. It's kind of like you got to tell him a window that he has that we've been given this 20-30 minute window and you've got 5 to 10 minutes. Can you be in that ballpark? Whereas if you don't communicate at all, it's the same with as if you don't communicate at all on any part of the wedding day, anything can happen. And your father might think, well, I'm allowed to do a speech and I have this plan to do whatever it is, and they go off on one. So yeah, we haven't seen it in the reception, probably because it is a bit more casual. Yeah. But at the same time we've seen the full standard speech that you would see in a banqueting room. I've also seen that. Yeah. So, but they were probably within the window of 5 to 10 minutes. We haven't seen the 30-minute one person speech. No, not at all.
So I kind of just wanted to, for people out there that have never heard of speeches happening, because you may not have ever heard about it, no one's ever spoke about it to you, or you've never been at a wedding where it's happened. So you're completely unaware this is an option to you. So we've seen it quite a few times, and we've already spoke to some couples for 2023, and they have told us they're doing it in 2023. So it's already popped up very early in the year, and it usually, when you hear these things in the spring, I find that you've seen more and more of it in the summer. So I'm anticipating 2023 to be more and more speeches in the drinks reception.
And I think venues have taken it into their kind of their bow of armour when they're trying to structure the whole thing of.
Well, it's great for them, because when the bell rings and they move everybody in, they don't have to worry about speeches before, during or after. They're now on to focusing on, we're going to feed the room, we're going to make sure everyone's happy, food, drink. They don't have to worry about speeches happening. Yeah. So I think the venues, I'd say the majority of venues would be quite happy to let people do the speeches in the drink reception before the bell rings. I honestly don't see why not. Yeah,
there's a couple of things. So I remember the other thing I was going to say earlier on, and then the other thing is you kind of, at the end of the speeches in the drink section, if the next thing is we then ring the bell, you've kind of got everybody's attention.
Absolutely.
You potentially, the atmosphere has built up, you ring a bell and there's a bit of a buzz and people actually move, as opposed to the slow drag out of a management or staff going
and they're
around
all
saying,
gathered in the one
move,
spot as well.
Yeah.
Most people are going to be there listening to the speeches. They're not going to be off checking into rooms, wandering around, doing other bits and pieces. And before you say anything else, right, because there's something else, because I'll forget about it, in the drinks reception. So usually, right, if it works in the drinks reception, people are doing speeches. A lot of people, and you love this, a lot of people, back to the cake subject, are displaying their cake in the drinks reception.
But not eating it. You gotta eat the cake, people.
You gotta eat the cake. But they are displaying their cake in the drinks reception area. They're doing their speeches, and then they're announcing the couple are now going to cut the cake. They go on over, they do the cake cutting for the room. Everyone gets their pictures. It's lovely. And then so by the time the bell rings for dinner, you're completely moving on to an evening section. There is no formalities when it comes to, I have to do a wedding speech. There's no formalities of, I have to stand up in front of a room. You don't have to do this anyway. And cut a cake. It's all done. So when you move on, you really are leaving the daytime section of the wedding and you're moving into the evening section of the wedding.
And it's very much a banqueting section. So it's like there's no 100%. Pressure, it's just we're enjoying food and drink.
Yeah. So that's something I just wanted to kind of like let people know. It happens, it's available a lot of the time to you, and just if you want to think outside the box, you don't want to do the formalities of the more traditional speeches in the banqueting room, there's an idea for you there.
Yeah. So the second thing I want to talk about earlier on was kind of like, again, it's probably people who aren't familiar, or even if you are familiar at weddings, but you don't really pay attention to timelines. It's kind of the window.
When you're a guest at wedding, you never pay attention to the guideline. You just you try to get to the ceremony on time, but from there you don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
you don't know what time of the day it is.
It may happen that it passes by and you're just going from spot to spot and you don't really know what time it is or the intricacies of all that. So the window, if we just go to bog standard window, is like 5:30 is normally a bell ring, like the start of kind of banqueting. And then the kind of the end of banqueting, if we kind of call the window of 8:30, thereabouts. And that the last kind of step is the kind of the last of the clean up of the banqueting and the changeover of the room. So that's kind of the window. And within that is kind of as well. So the bell rings, if we just kind of give people blocks of time, the bell rings, say it takes about 30 minutes to actually herd people into a banqueting room and take all their orders.
At least,
and then normally, in terms of kind of like, without having like the epic 1 hour or 2 hour speeches, say it's just the bog standard 20-30 minutes is speeches,
which is 90% of the time, to be honest,
which is the majority of the time. And that's why it's kind of like, that's why I don't want to mention it. Leave it, continue, and then it's like 2 hours service, give or take, shorter or longer than 2 hours food service.
If you've got 300 guests, it's going to be at least 2 hours.
And the style of venue. So that's kind of like your 3 hours of banqueting / speeches. So you can imagine if you add on, so the fear is, say the 2 hours beforehand. So say there's the epic speech beforehand, right? The epic one. So you could imagine if the kitchen's ready for like the 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock window to serve food. Okay. Let's call it 6:30 to 8:30. Okay.
Yeah. So just to explain things, 5:30 everyone goes in. They sit down. They announce the couple in. They sit down. You do a 20 to 30 minute speech. It's now 6:30 and the food is coming out.
So I suppose while the kitchen are ready at 6 o'clock, they probably know the speech is going to take 30 minutes. So really, like, while they're getting everything prepped, they're kind of like, they're actually going to go hard into action at 6:30 and try.
But they have a schedule the same way you have a schedule, and they have to for good food.
So you can imagine if speeches go from 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock.
That's never happened.
That's never happened. There's one. It's okay. We can talk about it.
No, it hasn't.
No, it hasn't. And it probably happens to everyone.
That's it. Like we've seen 2 hour speeches. We've seen 8 minute speeches. We've seen 30-second speeches. So there is extremes in it. But it's just the thing I want to say is that you're talking about.
So people understand. Well, it's whether you put the 2 hours in that block or the 2 hours after that block is. So you could imagine a chef and a kitchen staff from 6:30. Waiting to can we go now to actually they're waiting an hour and a half to 2 hours of waiting to cook your food. So that's the problem with the venue. And then we've heard of venues where a venue kind of gives you a strict window, or the epic one is basically like where the venue where we've seen the epic 2 hour speeches is there's now a fee of €500 if you want to go beforehand. And the reason is because the kitchen staff were ready to go for 2 hours and they just couldn't go, and then they had to do that window. So now your kind of your feed time, instead of being like from 6:30 to 8:30, was now 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. So it completely throws the kitchen staff, the wait staff, like they were ready. To
be honest with you though, it throws everything. So it throws the kitchen staff, it throws the wait staff, it throws the actual quality of the food. But you've also hired in a band, you've hired in a DJ. So wherever this 2 hour long speech comes from, you're eating into something. So you're either eating into, like, they're going to have to kind of speed up the service of food, which is very difficult to do and it's not going to be enjoyable. Or it's definitely going to eat into the time where, so ideally you're talking about a 2.5 hour band set and a 2 hour DJ set. There's always going to be a time where the music has to be cut off in a venue, unless you're in a private house in the middle of the woods, miles from anywhere. But the majority of the time, there's a 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. cut off. So if you throw in an extra 2 hours, instead of your band starting at 9:30, 10, we have been at weddings where the band has started at 11:30, 11:45, because things have run out, and a lot of the time speeches are something that fed in to things running on. You're spending money on food. It's a lot per plate. You're spending a lot of money on your entertainment. So we're not saying this for our own benefit. We're not saying it for the guest benefit. It's more for the couple. You've put time into researching all these things. You're excited about your first dance. We might not be excited about the first dance. You're excited about getting the first dance over with sometimes. But you're excited about getting onto the entertainment side of the evening. But you're killing your time. You're killing your own time. In essence, unless you are someone that says, I would actually prefer to do speeches than I would prefer to have a dance floor. Then that's very rare.
This is the other thing
but that's
where I'm kind of saying is, it's other people don't know, because when these things tend to happen, people don't realise that it got out of control and how out of control it got. And that's why I was saying earlier on, if you're a man in speeches and this is what it is, have it. It's your day. You do what you want, but be aware of the impact on food, the impact on music. That's what it really impacts.
So there's actually still a couple of other ways to do it. So we talked about the drinks reception before the bell calls. We've talked about potentially when you come into the room, you do it before you serve the meal, and then you've got the after the meal as well. When the meal is finished, everyone's fed, they've had a few drinks, the speeches start. There's other ways as well. People do it where a lot of the time we see the couple will go in, they'll make an entrance, they'll sit down, they will serve the room a starter. So anybody that's feeling a little bit hungry, it kind of gives them one course, and then when you've eaten that one course, the speeches start. So if it's especially if it's kind of a slightly later bell call for any reason, it's like a 6 or a 6:30 bell call because it was a later ceremony or something, people are hungry, and that's fair enough, and you do need to cater for your guests, hunger pangs and feelings, keep them happy. So a lot of the time we see they'll feed them a starter, then the speeches will happen, and then they'll move on with the rest of the courses. When you're doing this though, because you are mid-service, then you really have to stick to a time, because the kitchen have started serving. They've been told that the starters are going to come out, that in 20 minutes time, the soup is coming out. And if you go on for an hour instead of 20 minutes, it's a massive impact on the kitchen.
And we've seen, and trust your venue. We've seen the best of the best venues where they have a really good approach and a very gentle approach, where they've clearly communicated a couple of, you can do that, you can have your starter and then your speeches. You've got this window, and basically, if the speeches are running on, we're keeping an eye on it for basically our catering reasons. We're keeping an eye on the time, and they gently come up to you and just say, "Listen, you've used up the time allocation. There's one more speech, and basically that's just going to happen afterwards." But the reason why that works and it's polite is they've communicated to the couple that this is beforehand, way beforehand. This is how it is. So it's clear, everybody understands what the boundaries are. In the moment, then it happens, and basically they just gently say, we're just going to move on with the next course. And that's professional. And that's how you communicate, and that's how it works. But the majority of the time is actually everything fits in within that window, because the majority of speeches are 20 to 30 minutes. That it's not always, sometimes both fathers don't want to speak.
No, and they don't speak. And this is another thing now we can move on to, because I think that's a lot of the times people speak. It's there is, and I know that you probably don't want me to mention it, but there is people that do a course of speech, a course of speech, a course of speech.
No, that's one of the things, and it's I suppose there's a couple of things that I really wasn't going to mention, but it's not kind of an Irish tradition.
No, and it's very rare we see it.
We'll get into it. But the majority of the time, so when you're talking about course speech is that's a very American style.
Yes.
And the majority of the time we see that is when an American couple have requested that.
Yeah.
And a lot of venues say they recommend not to do it.
But they love their speeches, and the person speaking loves the fact that they're speaking. They're excited to speak. They're comfortable speaking. And it's very rare, and I don't, to Irish people out there that are comfortable with a microphone and speaking, thumbs up, well done to you. But the majority of people we speak to are not. And that's the simple truth.
Yeah.
You get someone that's, genuinely good at writing a speech, delivering a speech, and they're comfortable speaking to a room. You do come across them, but not very often.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, what I would say is there's people who speak for the sake of speaking, like yourself, and then there's people who speak with intent, like myself, and it's kind of the difference is
we're getting the cutout out. The cutout is coming back out. That's terrible now.
But the course of speech. The majority of Irish venues would say we don't recommend that because of the way the kitchen works, and they want to keep the flow of the service going.
Yeah.
So you have to trust them. And normally, when we've seen it in the American style, is a lot of people realize it's an art to serve the room, clear the room in a tidy way, and let a speech happen. Serve the next course, clear it, and let a speech happen. And that to happen in such a flow where someone actually starts their speech when they're supposed to start their speech, and somebody serves and clears when they're supposed to serve and clear. So that's a fine art in terms of kind of getting those three things and getting them in rotation, as opposed to catering staff who are doing 2 or 3 courses back to back, and they're in a routine and they're getting the whole room done and they're on it. So there's a fine art to doing that. So when we've seen the American style of course speech, the amount of people were saying we were in that room for 4 or 5 hours, like they are done.
And this is the honest truth about it. Like if you do it in this format, like everything will take longer.
Yeah,
100%. So and we've seen it like not once or twice. We've seen it quite a few times over the years, and every single time we've seen it, and it has been a late band start. It's 11 o'clock onwards. The band is starting, so it usually adds on a good hour. Yeah. So it's eating into a good hour of kind of your band section. Now, again, reverting back, if you're happy with that, that's fine. Go for it. We're just making people aware that sometimes you think, oh, that's a good idea. Well, we do it that way and break it up so people are getting a bit of food and they're relaxing in between. It's kind of, yes, there's that side of it, but you do have to think of everything you do will have an impact on the timeline of your day. Yeah.
We've talked so long that I need to reset the cameras. This is how far we're ranting on, Laura. See, you're talking without substance. And I mean, people want to get these speeches done nice and snappy. In this moment, you need to just go over there and fix the cameras, and you're the one ranting. Listen, I'm getting hungry and I want my dessert. Where's my cake? I'm not doing the second half of this until you give me cake. How about we have a big fight instead? We just do a podcast and do a full-blown argument, and we could just name it, like, when you're married, the argument. So we're back. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. Now I'd like to give you the CV of my child's life. So when she went to play school, that's the start of the speech. When you hear that, if I go to a family wedding, right, and if someone stands up and go, well, when they went to play school for the first day and then they cried and something, and then it's like on the second week of play school, they brought home a picture. It's like if it's a family wedding, I'm getting up and walking out. Because you know full well once they start what it is. Is this what was wrong with you? Is this what, when I mentioned the word speeches, you were like, I won't be able to hold myself back. I won't be able to. It's kind of like you laugh at me because like I'm building up and their daughter is terrified. Like I'm not allowed. Like at my brother's wedding, I wasn't allowed near a microphone. You said you were ready to rugby tackle me. You weren't the best man. Like you weren't. You were becoming that person that you don't like. Oh yeah. And you should never. Like the fact that you're allowed on this podcast with me at all, only because the name of the company is Laura and Benny, is the reason you're sitting here. Yeah, and I really do. Be allowed I actually do censor myself a lot. I know you do. I can see yourself holding yourself back. Behave yourself. Calm down. Take a breath. No, count back from 5. But anyway, I am building up like the most epic of speech kind of for our daughter, like when it comes around. She's already said you're not allowed to do a speech at her wedding. And why would you do a speech? I'm telling you, I would obviously be the one that modern do a speech. Society, I think it'll be like Benny was too nervous. You're not allowed to speak. Calm down. Okay. But as a starting point, go back to informing people about things. Right. Calm down. I'm going to inform people because I think again, like back to kind of people don't know the order of speeches. Like this is the type of stuff in the morning. Like they kind of like they're not familiar with the order. They're not familiar with what the roles are. And the MC is actually a big thing. And I want to talk about as well people lingering, whether it's the best man lingerer or the staff manager who's trying to be really helpful, but he's lingering, standing beside the person doing a speech. Well, that's from our perspective. It's kind of like... it's not. It's like because if I was doing... No, but whoever's doing the speech and they've got this person standing on their shoulder beside them and everyone else is sitting down and it's like... I think that's a little bit of a way of like
we're not letting these go on too long, so
And
I'm
that's
just going
not
to
nice.
wait
So you
here.
shouldn't.
No,
You
it's not
shouldn't.
nice.
No. If that's your angle, but I don't think it is because
But to
sometimes
all the wedding managers out there who do just kind of stand behind the top table and wait because they want to be the one that they want to move the mic from person to person, and they're being helpful, right?
They
I
think
get
they're being
that.
helpful.
No,
Yeah.
for whatever way they think they're being helpful or whatever it is. If you're going to do that, and if that's your way of doing things, right? Remember that there is 200 people possibly looking at you because you're standing at the top of the room looking out at them behind the person speaking. Number 2, you're in all the wedding photos. And number 3, you're in the video. Yeah. So if you're going to stand there and you're going to, do what you see as helpful and move the mic between places, smile. And if someone makes a joke, laugh. Don't stand there with your arms folded and just this flat face. Because I hope that some people that actually listen to this that actually do this at weddings, and I know you see it as, you don't see
or you don't realise you're doing it.
You don't see it how it looks. The amount of times I've actually had people come back to me, they love their wedding photos, and they say they're doing a wedding album, right? And they're printing their photographs in their album, and they're putting a few speeches in, and I will get the request saying, I'm really sorry to ask, and I know this has nothing to do with you and it's not your fault. Can you edit out the manager standing behind us in the speeches?
And sometimes you can't.
You can't. Like, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It depends on the backdrop.
Yeah.
And this is just the honest truth of what goes on. So if you're going to do that, then smile, interact. But I don't see why you need to do it.
No,
you can just step 5 or 6 steps to the side, away from the top table, and you can just wait there. There's always a sense of someone's wrapping up a speech, where you can then go, okay, they're finished, and you can walk over. If there's, and because there is some days where they're doing speeches, they're not 100% with the speeches, they're not 100% comfortable with the speeches, and they haven't arranged an MC. They've arranged the speakers and not the MC.
I want to talk about the MC so it's helpful to have an MC, but I understand sometimes when there's not. And sometimes the hotel feels like they're the MC. But in terms of a manager going, basically a manager coldly handing, say, to the father of the bride for the first thing, and the father of the bride has to kind of like...
Oh, you need to announce.
Rather than the room being kind of like warmed up a little bit by an MC and then handing the mic to him, and that helps whoever speaks first, or the transition from speaker to speaker. So it's a very simple thing to have an MC.
It is a simple thing to have an MC, but there is some days where everybody's so uncomfortable with the mock speeches, even though they're doing the speeches. There actually isn't a person in the room that they feel is close enough to them that they could, and is comfortable enough and would agree to MCing. And that's why sometimes the venue are just handing the mic from person to person. And we've also seen days where the managers actually stepped up and they're actually great crack, and they are MCing between people.
It's part of their shtick is that they're MC, and they're a good MC.
They're very good,
and they've found an appropriate way of, rather than me taking the attention, I'm just teeing people up. And they're good at it. And you can tell
that they've actually bothered to find out, like, not just the person's name and who's going next, but just a little bit of information about the person, so they can actually
don't be encouraging them, Laura. No, you're getting into dangerous territory.
And it's better than silently handing the mic. It is better than silently handing the mic. So do you want to talk a bit about MCs?
So the MC and the order is quickly what I want to touch on, and kind of what people's roles are, because there is a bit of, and it's kind of like, again, we're trying to give people tips rather than kind of to make the speeches as easy and as kind of friendly or as possible, rather than the room getting hostile, because we've seen the room get hostile, the boys at the back.
Lads, can I just say out there, like, no matter how long the speeches are going on for and how many pints you've had in the day, it's not okay to heckle the person speaking.
Oh no, heckle is great. Appropriate heckling is very important.
It's not okay
so
to heckle
what
the person
normally happens is the MC doesn't have to be the best man, it can be a groomsman. Nor does so while I'm saying that,
a lot of the time it isn't the best man.
The best man doesn't have to do the speech. A groomsman can. So the best man can be like, he is my best man because he's my brother or whatever it is. And then the groomsman actually, he's the talker. So he's going to do it, and he actually knows him, and he's going to do it. So the MC could be any one of those people. What normally happens is the MC gets the mic, because the hotel have now given them permission to go fire away there. There's a rattle on the glass to try and get the attention, and then there's a heckle from the room. And that heckle from the room, but that's part of the crack, and that's part of everybody pay attention, the speeches are going to happen.
But you find though when that heckle starts, when the MC stands up, you know for a fact that this person with this mic is a character, and everybody that's under the age of 40 in the room is aware that he is a character, and this is going to be good.
Or the good heckle is, and sometimes it's a surprise, and it might be when the mic is actually passed to either father, and then there's a table like, go on, so and so, go on, so, and you're like, oh, I didn't think this father was.
It does encourage them. There is different type of heckling.
This father is a bit of a character.
Yeah.
So that tends to happen in terms of the routine. MC stands up, bit of heckle, and then he tees up. So the bog standard order is...
Okay, so do this slowly now for people so they understand, because we get asked this question.
What's the order?
What's the order?
Okay.
Probably at every wedding.
So it tends to be father of the bride.
Okay.
Okay. And then it's father of the groom.
Yes.
Then it's groom.
Yes.
And then it's best man. And we always joke is sometimes the groom pulls a fast one and makes the best man go first so that the groom can get the last dig in. But it's very, very rare.
Yes.
Because normally that's the standard. And then obviously there's the more modern one whereby if a bridesmaid wants to speak, or the bridesmaids, because and it's probably something that we should chat about is there's lots of fun ways whereby speeches have expanded, and one of the things I want to say is while I think of it is there's lots of fun ways of doing speeches, but some best men I think miss the point of what their speech is actually about, and what I want to talk about is in general. So if 4 people get up and they thank every vendor and every person in the room.
Well, the biggest tip you can give is one person is allocated to thank yous.
Thank yous. And normally it's the groom who basically he thanks everybody on behalf of the couple. The couple feel they need to be thanked.
Yeah.
And the best man sometimes makes a mistake of he nearly robs the role of trying to do what the groom is and what the best man's doing, and he kind of does this kind of mix-max speech. Yeah. He doesn't need to thank everybody. Grand if he kind of wants to do a polite nod and kind of a hello to someone on the table, like the bridesmaids or the groomsmen. And
but I think it should be more kind of like personal too. Like sometimes there's kids involved, and he'll mention the kids, or it's more like the bridal party, the bride and groom. But it's not like you don't have to thank the hotel, the vendors, and name them all out because someone has just done that.
Yeah.
And like honestly, and you don't need to do it twice.
There was a point years ago where that was happening. Just one summer, I felt like it was happening a lot. I don't think it has happened in recent times, so maybe people understand a bit more. But if someone's out there getting ready, what do I do as a best man? You don't have to thank everybody under the sun.
No,
the groom is probably going to do that, or coordinate between everybody who's speaking.
Yeah.
Do you plan on thanking someone? Yeah. Grand, okay, you've covered that, so I'm not going to thank them.
Yeah.
So the repeat thank yous can add to the speeches, because if you spend 1 or 2 minutes thanking a list of people and everybody does that 2 or 3 times, that adds to it.
Yeah.
So the role of a best man is kind of just, if someone's trying to work it out, one of the ways of thinking of it, or the way that we've seen it is, you've kind of got an inside track on the groom, or maybe you know the couple. Sometimes they know the couple and they can actually talk about both the couple, but it's okay if you don't, it doesn't have to be that type of a person who's doing a speech, but you're talking it from more of a friend's standpoint, a mate standpoint of telling a fun story if you have a fun story, making it relevant.
Story. Lads, be careful with the stories. There's people in the room that there's certain things that should not be said or told to everybody. The stuff I know about people.
Yeah. What couldn't go into the speech? Yeah. That is kind of one of the conversations the morning of with the lads is.
Is it appropriate to say this? Absolutely not.
No, I wouldn't veto it, but it's normally you kind of get a groomsman who kind of goes, go on, tell Benny the story of the story that wasn't allowed in the speech, and it's normally a good funny story, and it's kind of like it's borderline, so you don't know whether you can say it in front of a parent type thing. So in terms of your best man is you're coming from a friend standpoint to kind of give the crowd a bit of a kind of remind them of a story, because half the lads might know it, or if they don't know the person, is telling them a bit about their character, and it's normally a fun story, and then it's kind of you're wishing them well.
100%,
and it doesn't, and that's
sometimes
what the angle is.
Sometimes the best men forget to wish them well. They just get too excited with the laughter of telling a story, and it's like, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Thanks, lads. Sit down.
So and what the traditionally is the father speaking on behalf of the parents. So whatever parent decides to get up to speak, they're speaking from kind of a more close family angle rather than a mate's angle, and that's what it is. And it's not because the best man sometimes, he does do the same 2 or 3 minutes of the groom, the groom gets up and he's kind of on behalf of the couple thanking everybody, and he's going to do that. So the best man doesn't need to thank everybody on behalf of the couple when the couple are going to go up and thank everybody on behalf of themselves.
And it will make it a lot easier for you if you're told you've got a 5-minute window to do your speeches. If you take out those thank yous and that repetition, you're saving yourself 2 to 3 minutes, which is half your speaking time. It's now very easy to get up, introduce yourself to the room, tell a story, and some of the best men, they'll kind of like, they'll incorporate a little bit of how the story linked into something that happened to today, and they're very, very funny stories.
Yeah.
They'll actually use the wedding day in the speeches, but not in a very long way. They'll incorporate it into their story, because usually the story is the character of the person, and they usually stick to their character on the wedding day, and it all links up, and they're brilliant speeches.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you wanted to tell people about Best Man speech before you go on to something else?
Well, I think the connection, so we talked about the best man, and I think because there are, I suppose the tradition is the men get up to speak, and that nonsense is gone, right?
Yeah, well, what
so
I was going to say was...
the mothers get up, but then while we're talking about the best man, let's talk about the bridesmaids. So because one of
we're very talkative today. I'm actually just gonna put my feet up and just, you go, yeah.
No, I tee up and you can tell some of the stories. I'm going to tee up.
Are we swapping roles?
Yeah.
Is this becoming the Benny and Laura show, is it?
I threatened a few episodes ago that I could introduce, it was actually just the episode that just went up, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah,
my
that's
fine
right.
introduction.
Yeah, it was very funny. Yeah.
But it's, so when the bridesmaids get up to speak, it tends to be, they do something a little more clever.
Because women are clever.
Women
are clever.
But you don't have to. So if best men have the habit of copying a groom's speech when they should actually do a best man's speech, right?
Yeah.
Bridesmaids don't need to copy the best man, and they normally don't. So it's whether it's poems.
Now, unless there's no best man speech, and you, in essence, as the maid of honour or the bridesmaid, are the best person on the day, and you are giving that speech.
The funny story.
That is different. But if the best man is coming, especially if they're usually coming last, the best man, as you said.
Yeah.
So if they're coming after you and you rob their speech, the poor guy, have just absolutely shook him. You can see they're kind of looking at the sheets going, I can't believe she just told that story. That is my speech, kind of thing.
Yeah, so
and
maybe
that's again communication between you.
That's fair enough. But what I tend to see, or what I've noticed, is they do something like, you can do the traditional from a woman's standpoint. You can do the equivalent of a best man speech and do it for the bride, and that's fine. But what tends to happen is it's a poem, or say the three girls at Christmas, they got up and they had a kind of
party to say,
and they delivered, and it was just something fresh and new, different angle, rather than say just adding on a 5th or 6th or 7th speech, which is kind of the same 3 or 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's kind of coming at from a different angle. It tends to be pretty cool.
Yeah, and then you got the bride. The bride will, more and more we're seeing it, it's not just the groom is doing a speech, it's also the bride. So the few days we see this, some days the groom is not doing a speech at all, he's just not into speaking, and she's like, I will do the speech for the two of us. So the days where both bride and groom will do a separate speech, but they tend to both keep their speeches quite small, and they do communicate about who's thanking who. They might split the thank yous between them. And then there's days where they both stand up together, and they've kind of created this joint speech where they've kind of allocated different sections, and they kind of pass the mic between each other, and that's something they do kind of as a couple together. And as well as that, we have also seen two dads get up, and then a mom will get up as well. We see moms getting up instead of dads. There might not be a dad, so there's a brother will speak on behalf of the family. So there's loads of ways of doing it, and the structure you just gave at the start being father the bride, father the groom, the best man. That's if it's the real, that's if it's the, what was always the core four, we call them, the core four.
Core four. Oh, Jeannie, Mac, lingo and everything being developed.
But if it's a case of you're throwing extra people in, then as long as, if the father of the groom is still speaking, or father of the bride is still speaking, the best man is still speaking, it doesn't really matter what happens in the middle, as long as you kind of start and end with those two, it tends to work. But sometimes there might be, as you said, there's not a best man speaking. There's one of the bridesmaids are going to get up instead. There's mother speaking instead of fathers. There's brothers speaking instead of parents. Sometimes we see the grandmothers get the mic.
Yeah, actually, because they're still knocking around, and it's pretty impressive.
But
that's it. And they just want to wish them well. They just wanted to.
Kids.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got your own kids. We've had kids get up and they have a little speech. Like sometimes it's like somebody will draft a speech for them and they think it's kind of age appropriate, something they'd like to say, and then they read from that, and the kids actually just get up and kind of say a few words. So there is loads and loads of different combinations. But what we're kind of getting at is we're helping you with the structure of it, of who kind of goes first if you're going the core four, I'm going to call it from now on. And as well as that, so for every extra person, when we chat to people beforehand and we say, when are you doing your speeches? And they say, they're before the meal, they're only about 20 minutes long. You get, cool, well, who's speaking? And then they name out father the groom, father the bride, the groom speaking, the bride speaking, there's a bridesmaid speaking, the mother of the bride's going to just say a few words, and then the best man speaking as well. And my brother also might speak, right? And we've told them, you've got 5 minutes each to speak. The math doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
5/8 is 40, so
exactly, and that's if someone doesn't go on.
Of someone going on.
Exactly. Yeah. So for every extra person that gets up and speak, you're just adding on the time. And I'm not saying don't do this.
Just be conscious.
I'm just saying, like, build the timeline to the realistic, what's going to happen in that moment, kind of thing. And the more people you allow to speak, the more you have to really let people know. There are 8 people speaking, you really only have this window. You can't go on, because it'll mean that somebody may not be able to speak because we're going to run out of time. Yeah.
I suppose, and then when we were talking about all the different things, it's kind of like you talked about the joint thank yous, which is pretty cool. And sometimes bringing it back to the reception is a couple don't want the hoopla of speeches, so it's just the two of them are going to go up and say joint thank you in the reception and send people in, and it's very, very brief. And when it's done right, it's nice. The other thing is kind of like, so when we're talking about all the different people, and know your people and know your crowd. So in terms of you know your crowd. So if you know a father is in danger of going off on one and you don't want him to go off on one, have a chat about him or team up. The other thing is there's a few things I want to mention. And it's kind of
I'm loving your enthusiasm.
It's just the danger. Yeah. I'll start off with a positive. I've only ever seen one man use a PowerPoint well. Okay, so no, right.
I still laugh about that.
So it was epic. So and the reason
there was photoshopping.
There was photoshopping of nudity that was inappropriate. But it was
also appropriate because it was just too funny.
But he delivered it. But he used it as it was a small gimmicky prop as part of his speech was funny without the thing. But basically when he flipped onto the next slide, he nailed it. Yeah. Or there's the cassette player story whereby basically as part of the speech they're pressing play on a cassette and it plays a certain song.
Oh yeah.
And it's like that's pretty epic. Like so in terms of like
if your timing is good,
your timing is good. So
brilliant.
You're going to do a good speech and you've got a prop that's grand. But the person who puts up a slideshow, okay, so let's say
Penny loves a good slideshow.
Father of the bride gets up. He's the first to speak.
Yeah.
He speaks for 5 minutes and then he spins around and goes, and I've got a slideshow that I've put together and I'm going to press play. And the reason why I flag it is because basically you've only just started the speeches. You've got the room, 200 people in the room's attention. Okay? Yeah. And now he puts on a slideshow that goes on for 5 or 10 minutes and the room atmosphere is flat.
Well, you can start hearing the chatting at the table. The mumbling starts. And then you have to get them back.
And then he might have something to say after the end of the slideshow. And you've only started the speeches. Yeah. So there's an appropriate time for a slideshow, which is like you don't have to force people to watch a slideshow.
You can put it on at the end, just leave it on background.
You can put it on when the desserts are on, and it can be something. There's a clever way of doing everything. Yeah. But like locking people into the room and talking at them for 2 hours, or singing show tunes at them for 2 hours, like in a school show tunes in a school play.
And it's all right. He doesn't need to do school plays anymore.
So in the same way, if I'm putting on like a 10-minute slideshow of whatever it is and making a whole room watch it, there's sometimes it's clever and sometimes it's not clever. The other thing is video messages. So video messages when it's an international wedding can go down really well.
Well, when we had COVID around, it was just almost something we saw at every wedding because it was just people that they weren't allowed to attend because of the numbers. But it was something that existed before and it will something that exists afterwards. Yeah.
So there's a way of using it and it was very appropriate for COVID. It can be appropriate for international where it's such long distance, whether it's 20 or 30 people couldn't come from Australia or America or wherever it was. But sometimes, so in the same way, things can be done really well and things can be done just a little kind of out of pace. So if say you've got like 30 messages from Australia, and it's like they're all very, very similar. So if you bang that in the middle of speeches, it can really slow down the pace, the same way a slideshow can. So it's nearly like kind of great you've got these 30 messages. The couple can probably watch them all in their own time, but if you're like the best man to organise this, maybe the best 3 or 4 could be a clever way of doing it. It's just like there's a clever way of editing it down, and then there's a clever way of killing the buzz in the room.
Yeah, I don't think you can edit it down. I disagree with you in that sense, because for the people that bother to put the message together and they've been told to play it at the wedding and I didn't make the shortcut, I'd be like, why is my video not up there? That's what I'd be thinking. Don't talk yet now because you're very talkative. Right, calm down,
Censor.
Right, calm down. What you need to do if you are a best man or someone and you're organising this and you're asking people, somebody has to request the messages to be recorded, to send them to someone to edit them down. The smart way to do it is to get on to people and say, listen, there's actually a lot of people going to record messages. You've got 20 seconds, you've got 10 seconds, whatever it is. So that you can, so say if you've got like 20 people that are going to leave a message and you tell all 20 people that you've got a 10-second slot, no longer. And if they send you on a 40-minute or 40-second slot, you go back to them and say, get that down to 10 for me. It's a short message. And in that sense, then you're not leaving anyone out. You're keeping it that you've got everybody's attention and it only lasts for a couple of minutes. So I'm going to disagree with you on that edit. I think my edit option is more sensible.
But that's making a plan and that's communicating, so it all goes back to communicating.
Absolutely.
And just in case people think like, Jeannie Mac, they're really kind of lashing into everything. It's just kind of what we're doing. We're giving them a heads up of all, because this is what randomly, to be honest, slideshows don't happen very often.
No.
And the majority of the time is they are put on later on, or they're just playing in the background somewhere. That's what it is. The video messages, they don't happen very often, like last year, because to a great extent it was a COVID fix, and then it's very rare that someone is traveling from internationally and they're not bringing 30 close people with them. So it's very, very rare. It's just these random things happen. So it's kind of like, if you get a sense, it's the same way, if you get a sense of the father's going to go off one, the father's going to organise a slideshow, somebody's going to organise video messages, you can kind of be aware of it and communicate what you want, don't want, and a clever way of doing it without it taking over time that wasn't allocated in the day. Because one of the things, kind of the example we can take it away from speeches is, there's always someone on a wedding day that is trying to be really, really helpful, right? But and they're kind of either doing something or they're stopping something from happening, and it's like they didn't talk to the couple, they're not aware of the scheduling plan, and they have the best intentions in that moment, but actually they've either stepped in front of a surprise that's totally gone wrong, or they're trying to cut something short. The best intentions, and they could be staff, or they could be guests, or they could be some Joe Blogs off the street, and you're like, go back in your work van there, like you're grand, like. So like in the same way, know what the couple want and what their plan is, because if it's not planned, you could rob 30 minutes that the couple wanted to use for something else.
Oh yeah, 100%. And the thing about it is that, like, I understand what you're saying, but there are days where people decide like things are a surprise. So the couple actually aren't. They don't know about it, right? And you want to keep it a surprise from the couple. And it's a lovely idea if you're doing this. But here's a little bit of advice or a tip I give you. If you're deciding to get a surprise video message, say from a comedian or something, or you are doing the slideshows from people abroad, or you've just got something that you're fitting into the day that's going to take up to 20 minutes, get onto the venue. And you can say to the venue, listen, introduce yourself, this is who I am, I'm going to be doing this at the wedding, can you recommend a good time to do this that will fit into the running of their day? Please don't tell the couple I'm doing this, so they know about it, kind of thing. And then at least if you've told the venue that, like, I know when we're at a wedding, I spend a lot of the time communicating with the wedding coordinators, the duty managers, so that you're kind of like, I'll say, okay, so I've been told the speeches before the meal today, still the same, and they'll go, yeah, still the same, still 4 people speaking, yeah, still 4 people speaking. So what I've been told and what they've been told are the same, and if we've got conflicting information, we just find out so everyone knows. So when I check in, like a lot of other photographers will do, they'll go, oh, and actually, just to let you know, the bridesmaid today at this time is going to do this. So then I know. Yeah. So it's kind of a case of, you know, if you want to do a surprise for someone, it's such a lovely idea, go for it. And you know, I'm assuming you know them well enough to know what type of surprise that they're going to be, like they're going to enjoy, kind of thing. But at least tell at bare minimum the venue that this is what's going to happen. Because I have been at weddings where someone has done a surprise something, and literally in the moment they're trying to find a manager to tell them they're going to do this, and they've told the band they can start. Do you know?
So
it's so like, I mean, and like the thing about it is, I know we're kind of talking a lot about, and you can't help but talk about, you know, what can go wrong, because things can go wrong with any part of a wedding day. But I think with speeches, it's so broad, the different things that can happen, because they can happen at different times of the day. There's different people speaking. It's going to be different at every wedding, kind of thing. Speeches are great. Speeches are entertaining. When you've hired a videographer and they're recording your speeches, and you have those, especially if it's like you've got a father or one of your children sings a song or does a little speech, or do you know, like somebody else really gets up, or the best man just absolutely nails it and gives the funniest speech you've ever heard, and the whole room just erupts.
That kind of tees me up that footage. Two things. So there's two things. So there's the best man, right? So I'll start that way and work back to the other one. Even though it is what it is. I can't believe it. We've talked on again another.
Oh, I can, because I actually have said about two things this whole podcast. Maybe you need to have your own podcast.
Right, so what I was going to be there, like, be kind to the best man, who basically, he was told there's no speeches, okay? And basically, say the groom and the bride are just going to do a quick thank you, and that's all. We don't want speeches.
I know where you're going with this. Go on.
And then the best man's like, he's my buddy. I'm doing this speech. And he comes up, and we've seen him once where he was so nervous because he knew the bride was going to kill him.
Kill him.
Okay, kill him, right? Yeah. And she was setting him on fire,
she
right?
was getting his head
and there he was, like, fumbling out the thing and coming out there, saying hello to the mic, and he was terrified. He thought he was going to get sniped, right? So, but the thing was, he nailed it.
He did.
And he didn't go off on one too long, but he nailed it. And she warmed up into the speech, and it was a good speech.
She had tears running down her face. She was laughing so hard.
It was a good speech. So sometimes forgive.
I'd say pat on the back to that man for his bravery and knowing that when he got up and got that mic, he was going to slay it. He did such a good job.
But he could have been rugby tackled, and it could have never happened type thing.
Either way, it would have been a great outcome.
Exactly. So when the time comes, don't take the microphone off Benny. The other thing is, so that kind of leads me on to, it's kind of a hint of, it's not an Irish thing, but open mics, okay?
I purposely wasn't bringing this up because I assumed that you didn't want to talk about.
I don't want to talk about this, but what I'm going to say is, so we know a videographer who does majority of his, like, international weddings, and the majority of it is American weddings. And basically, when the couple go, we're doing this on the speeches. We're unsure whether we're going to have an open mic, and his response...
Can I just stop you 2 seconds just to explain to people what an open mic is, because they're like, is this karaoke or what the hell's going on? So what it is you would have your structure of your speeches. You have everyone we just talked about will do their planned speech, and at the end, the last person who's speaking usually says, we're now going to open the mic up to the room. If anybody would like to take the microphone and give your well wishes to the couple, please stand up.
Yeah,
and when they say open mic, it is whoever and as many people are as willing to do this. So this could go on for 5 minutes, or it can last half an hour. I'm being polite about it, half an hour.
But his response is always, nothing good has ever come from an open mic.
I've had very entertaining open mic nights.
from his opinion. So it's like, because you could imagine, like you just said, well wishes. There's no need for people to get up and go, I wish you well.
So funny. I love wishing people well. I give them high fives, hugs.
But there is, if you're going to be a best man and get up and do an impromptu speech and kind of nail it, that's why you're speaking on a mic. Nobody wants a rundown of whatever it is. Yeah,
and a lot of people and we've actually done this where we've covered weddings. We've covered them over 2 days. So we're there the day before the wedding, where they'll have like it's not a sit down meal or anything. They'll have a pre-wedding day kind of gathering, finger food, drinks.
Yeah.
And like we've done a wedding where I've done a couple of weddings where we've done this. We've captured that part of the day for them. And they did the open mic for people that wanted to kind of say something about the couple, give them well wishes. This is the night before the wedding. So, and there's no time restraints on the night before the wedding. There's not much going on. So it actually is a great way to fill in if you've got that crowd that, you know, will tell stories and, you know, give, you know, kind of, what am I trying to say? Kind of advice on marriage, and it can be quite funny, and it can people cry, and there's loads of emotion. It's lovely. And then when you're on the wedding day, you don't need to do it because you've given people the opportunity the night before. If your crowd are the type of crowd that they live for this, they love this. This is great. Yeah. I mean, I'm waiting to be invited to a wedding where there's an open mic night. and I'm going to just have the crack.
So you know what's going to happen this summer is that we're gonna experience. We haven't in years. Okay, we haven't seen a 2-hour long speech. There's going to be a 2-hour long speech, and they're going to add on after a 2-hour long speech. They're going to have an open mic on top, and then there's going to be a slideshow, and then the video messages.
I'll just be in the corner, like entertaining myself. But
what else? Because I hijacked this.
You did hijack this, and I actually just want to congratulate you, Benny, for the amount of speaking you did in this hour podcast. Because I've never heard you speak this much in the whole time I've been married to you. It's impressive.
Jeepers.
Yeah, I didn't realise when I mentioned this, like, it's been a week since I mentioned this, and you were absolutely against us speaking about speeches.
I threw a strop last week, lads, and would not get on the camera.
Threw your dolls out of the pram, like, I was like, bloody hell, calm down. Now, like, and I get that there's a lot there that, like, it gives people a lot to think about, but I don't want people to listen to this podcast and see speeches as a negative thing, because they are not a negative thing. They can, like,
they're brilliant, yeah.
Like, genuinely, and if you follow us on Instagram, we get in the car a lot of nights and we're kind of like, we're hyped from the wedding and we're kind of saying goodnight, and we usually kind of like, I won't plan what I'm going to say, but the part of the day that stands out to me just kind of like flows out. Like, I literally just, like, it comes to my mind and I say it. A lot of the time we get in the car and we say goodnight, we are laughing or mentioning the best man speech tonight was just epic. But when I'm editing the photographs, like editing the speeches, the reaction of the guests and the actual, like, it's hilarious, it's emotional, it's gorgeous, and then the audio and the video as well. It's just beautiful to have it. So there's so many positives to having speeches. We're just making you aware of the different ways you can do it, the ways that work really, really well, the ways that you have to be careful. If you want to do it. I'm not saying not do it. I'm just saying be careful and put that extra bit of planning into it if you decide to go with split between courses, or, you know, like a lot of people speaking, or the ultimate open mic. So that's kind of all I wanted to kind of give people the information, honestly, about. Like, we've done hundreds of weddings, we've seen literally thousands of people speak at a wedding, and like it's great and people enjoy it, but just plan it. And also, like, if you don't want to do speeches on your wedding day, like the amount of people say to us, but I'm going to have to, people will see it as rude. Like, I have to do a speech, I'm going to at least have to say thank you, and they're almost trembling telling you about the fact that the thought of doing a speech, you do not have to do a speech. And please, if your father is very, very kind of like nervous about doing it, and he's just not a talkative man, don't make him do a speech. He doesn't have to. And if no one else in your family is a talker, no one else has to do it on behalf of him either. Like, it's just something that it's to add to the day, not force on the day, is what I would say to you when it comes to speeches.
So if people have stuck with us for the last 60 plus minutes.
Oh, I'd say they tuned out about 10 minutes in, they definitely tuned out because you just went on a rant.
Yeah, but I really want to highlight that the majority, in case people are freaked out or terrified or whatever.
I'm a bit terrified of you right now. I'm going to ring Amy after this and be like, Amy, look, you can never get married.
Never give them the mic.
Like, you can never get married. There can't be speeches at your wedding.
Okay.
Okay.